The rain-slicked streets of Brooklyn glistened under the amber glow of streetlights, a restless pulse thrumming through the borough's veins. Skylet Roberts pulled her worn jacket tighter around her, the November chill biting at her exposed fingers as she hurried past graffiti-streaked walls and shuttered bodegas. Her boots splashed through shallow puddles, each step echoing her racing heart. She was 27, with a fire in her soul that had carried her through years of adversity, growing up in the shadow of systemic racism, a single mother who worked 3 jobs and a scholarship that barely got her through college. But tonight, that fire flickered, dimmed by the weight of a hospital bill that loomed like a guillotine. Mercy Hospital in Chicago, where her mother Grace lay tethered to machines in a sterile room, had sent another notice: pay the $20,000 for her cancer treatment, or they'd halt care. Skylet's part-time job as a barista in Brooklyn barely covered rent, let alone medical costs. Her mother's illness had stripped away their savings, and Jade, her older sister, had spiraled into addiction, offering no help, only resentment. Skylet's heart ached with the memory of Grace's warm hands braiding her hair during Juneteenth celebrations, singing gospel hymns under Brooklyn's summer skies. Those memories were fading, and Skylet would do anything to keep them alive. The decision had come to her in a haze of desperation, whispered by a coworker who knew a place in Manhattan where women could earn quick money. Not waitressing, not cleaning, but something darker, a service for the city's elite, cloaked in the glitz of exclusive clubs. Skylet had recoiled at first, her pride, a shield forged from years of overcoming stereotypes about black women. But the hospital's ultimatum had cracked that shield. Tonight she stood at the edge of a moral abyss, ready to leap. The subway ride to Manhattan felt like a descent. The train rattled through tunnels, its fluorescent lights flickering like her resolve. Skylet clutched her phone, rereading the email from Mercy Hospital: payment due by November 15th. It was November 10th. 5 days. Her reflection in the subway window showed a woman with deep brown eyes, coiled hair pulled into a tight bun, and a jaw set with determination. She whispered to herself, "For Mama. Just this once." The club Neon Veil was tucked behind an unmarked door in Times Square, its facade blending with the chaos of billboards and taxis. Inside, the air was thick with perfume, and the low hum of jazz, a nod to Harlem's legacy, though the clientele was far from the soulful crowds of the Apollo Theater. Men in tailored suits sipped overpriced whiskey, their eyes scanning the room like predators. Skylet's stomach churned as a woman in a sequined dress, the manager led her to a private lounge. "You're lucky," the woman said, her voice clipped. "You're here for Mr. Nelson. He's particular. Ronald Nelson." Even in Skylet's world of scraped-together rent and second-hand clothes, the name carried weight. CEO of Nelson Corporation, a tech empire headquartered in Manhattan's Flatiron District. He was a fixture in Forbes and the New York Times. A white man in his mid-30s, born into Upper East Side privilege, he'd built a reputation for ruthlessness in boardrooms and charm in ballrooms. Skylet had seen his face on magazine covers, piercing blue eyes, sharp jawline, and a smile that promised both danger and salvation. She hadn't expected to meet him here in this shadowed underworld. The lounge was dimly lit, velvet curtains, muffling the outside world. Ronald sat in a leather armchair, his navy suit impeccable, a glass of bourbon untouched on the table. His presence filled the room not with arrogance, but with a quiet intensity, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Skylet stood before him, her borrowed dress, a cheap red number, feeling like a costume. She braced herself for judgment, but his gaze was different, curious, not predatory. Ronald said, "I'm not interested in this kind of service." His voice low, almost apologetic. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, studying her. "Why are you here?" Skylet's throat tightened. She wanted to snap back to tell him it wasn't his business, but the weight of her mother's life pressed against her chest. "I need money," she said, her voice steady, despite the tremor in her hands. "My mother's dying. Cancer. The hospital won't treat her without payment." Ronald's expression softened, a flicker of something empathy crossing his face. He stood towering over her at 6 feet, his cologne, a subtle mix of cedar and citrus. "How much?" "20,000, she whispered, shame burning her cheeks. She hated him seeing her like this, a stereotype he could exploit. He nodded as if it were a business deal. "I'll cover it. But you don't belong here." His tone wasn't condescending, but firm, like a man used to giving orders. He pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and showed her a confirmation $20,000 transferred to Mercy Hospital's account. Skylet's breath caught. It was too easy, too unreal. Why, she asked, suspicion sharpening her words. "What do you want?" "Nothing," Ronald said, his eyes locking onto hers. "I lost my mother to illness years ago. I know what it's like to feel helpless." Skylet didn't trust him, not yet. Men like him didn't give without taking. But the transaction was done, and the manager ushered her out, warning her to leave quietly. Ronald stayed behind his silhouette, fading into the lounge's shadows. Skylet stepped back into the neon chaos of Times Square, her heart a tangle of relief and unease. The money was real, but so was the question. What did Ronald Nelson expect in return? Back in Brooklyn, the night turned darker. Skylet hurried through Crown Heights, where the hospital payment was secure, but her relief was short-lived. Jade, her sister, waited in the alley outside their shared apartment. Her eyes were glassy, her movements jittery, a telltale sign of her addiction. "You got money, Sky," Jade slurred, stepping closer. "Heard you hit the jackpot tonight." Skylet's blood ran cold. She'd hidden her plans, but Jade always had a way of sniffing opportunity. "Stay away from me," Skylet said, clutching her purse. But Jade was faster, her desperation a blade. She lunged, snatching the cash Skylet had earned for essentials. Skylet fought back, her nails digging into Jade's arm. But her sister was relentless, fueled by addiction's cruelty. "Please give it to me," Jade hissed, shoving Skylet against a brick wall. The cash meant for rent, for food, was scattered across the wet pavement. Skylet's scream echoed, but the street was empty. Or so she thought. A sleek black car pulled up its headlights, cutting through the rain. Ronald Nelson stepped out, his coat billowing like a cape. He didn't hesitate, striding toward Jade with a calm authority that made her freeze. "Enough," he said, his voice a low growl. "Give it back." Jade laughed, a hollow sound. "Who's this Sky? Your knight in shining armor." But Ronald's presence was undeniable, his gaze pinning her like a predator. He didn't touch her, didn't need to. Jade dropped the cash, muttering curses, and vanished into the night. Skylet knelt, gathering the soggy bills, her hands shaking. Ronald crouched beside her, his fingers brushing hers as he helped. "You don't have to do this alone," he said softly. "I don't need your pity." Skylet snapped, standing. Her pride stung, but so did his kindness. Why was he here? How had he found her? She noticed his phone, a tracking app open, likely linked to the club's security system. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a calculation. "I'm not pitying you," Ronald said, his eyes searching hers. "I'm offering a way out. But it's your choice." Skylet wanted to walk away and reject this man who seemed too perfect and powerful. But the hospital's deadline loomed, and her mother's life hung in the balance. She nodded a silent agreement and followed him to his car. As they drove through Brooklyn's rain-soaked streets, Skylet felt the first spark of something dangerous. Not fear, but fascination. Ronald Nelson was a puzzle, a man who could save or ruin her, and she was already caught in his orbit. The car stopped outside her apartment, a crumbling brownstone. Ronald handed her a card with his name and a number. "Call if you need me," he said. "But don't come back to that club. You're worth more than that." Skylet watched him drive away, the card burning in her hand. She didn't know if she'd call, But she knew one thing: Ronald Nelson had changed her life tonight, and she wasn't sure if it was for better or worse. The Manhattan skyline gleamed like a constellation of ambition, its glass towers reflecting the morning sun, as Skylet Roberts stepped off the subway at Flatiron. Nelson Corporation's headquarters loomed before her, a monolith of steel and innovation. 2 weeks had passed since her encounter with Ronald Nelson at Neon Vale, and the memory still lingered like a melody she couldn't shake. The $22,000 he'd wired to Mercy Hospital had saved her mother's treatment, but it came with a cost, a debt she felt in her bones, not in dollars. Skylet wasn't one to accept charity, especially not from a man like Ronald White, wealthy and wielding power that could crush her world as easily as it had saved it. Her salvation came through Marcus Johnson, a college friend who'd clawed his way into Nelson Corporation's marketing department. A black man from Bed-Stuy, Marcus carried the same resilience Skylet knew, well honed by years of navigating spaces where they were often the only ones who looked like them. He'd handed her a lifeline over coffee at a Brooklyn diner, an entry-level job at Nelson Corporation. "It's not glamorous," Marcus had warned, his eyes warm with understanding. "But it's a start. And you're tougher than most." Skylet adjusted her blazer, a thrift store find, tailored to fit her frame, and stepped into the lobby. Marble floors gleamed under chandeliers, and employees in crisp suits moved with purpose. She felt like an intruder, her skin contrasting with the predominantly white faces around her. The receptionist, a woman with a tight smile, handed her a badge: Skylet Roberts, Junior Analyst. The title was small, but it was hers. Her first day was a blur of paperwork and introductions, punctuated by subtle glances that carried the weight of judgment. Sophia Bennett, a senior analyst with platinum blonde hair and a penchant for microaggressions, was her supervisor. Sophia said, "You must be the diversity hire." Her smile sharp as she handed Skylet a stack of files. "These need to be digitized by noon. Please don't mess it up." "Please don't mess it." Skylet bit back a retort, her years of enduring slights in school and work stealing her resolve. She dove into the task, her fingers flying over the keyboard, determined to prove her worth. By noon, she digitized the files and caught an error in a data set that could have cost the company thousands. Sophia's eyebrows rose, but her praise was grudging. Not bad, for a beginner. The real shock came at the end of the day, when Skylet was summoned to the executive floor. The elevator ride felt like an ascent into another world, its glass walls offering a view of Manhattan's sprawl. She expected a meeting with HR, not the CEO himself. But there he was, Ronald Nelson, standing by a floor-to-ceiling window, his silhouette framed against the city. His suit was charcoal this time, his tie a deep crimson that matched the fire in his gaze. "Ms. Roberts," he said, turning to face her, "you're settling in." Skylet froze, her heart a drumbeat. She hadn't seen him since that night in Brooklyn, when he'd saved her from Jade's theft. "Mr. Nelson," she said, her voice steady, despite the butterflies in her stomach. "I didn't expect to see you." He said, "I make a point to meet new hires," but his eyes told a different story. Intense searching, as if he saw through her carefully constructed walls, especially those with potential. The conversation was brief, professional, but charged with an undercurrent neither acknowledged. Ronald briefly asked about her work goals and her mother's health. Skylet answered cautiously, aware of the power imbalance. He was her boss now, not her savior, and she refused to be indebted. Yet his questions felt genuine, his interest a thread pulling her closer. Over the next week, Skylet threw herself into her role, her analytical mind catching patterns others missed. She worked late, poring over data in a quiet cubicle, the hum of Manhattan outside her window. Marcus became her ally, sharing tips at a food truck near Madison Square Park over lunch. "You're killing it," he said, biting into a jerk chicken taco. "But watch out for Sophia. She's got claws." Sophia's claws showed during a team meeting, when she assigned Skylet an impossible deadline, a market analysis due in 24 hours. "Let's see if you can keep up, Sophia," said, her tone dripping with challenge. Skylet stayed up all night, her apartment lit by the glow of her laptop fueled by coffee and determination. She submitted the report at dawn, earning a nod from Marcus and a scowl from Sophia. The tension broke when Ronald appeared at her cubicle one evening, the office empty save for the cleaning crew. "Burning the midnight oil?" he asked, leaning against the partition. His casual tone belied the intensity of his presence, his cologne stirring memories of that rainy night. "I'm not here to slack," Skylet set, her eyes on her screen. "I owe it to myself and my mother to do this right." Ronald nodded, a flicker of admiration in his gaze. "You don't owe anyone anything, Skylet. You're earning your place here." The words hit harder than she expected, stirring a warmth she didn't want to feel. She changed the subject by asking about a project she'd overheard a new AI platform that Nelson Corporation was launching. Ronald's face lit up, and he launched into an explanation, his passion for innovation infectious. For a moment, they were just two people talking, the CEO and the junior analyst fading into the background. Their conversation was interrupted by Sophia, who appeared with a stack of files and a pointed look. "Mr. Nelson, I didn't realize you were still here," she said, her tone sugary. "Skylet, these need to be reviewed tonight." Ronald's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, only giving Skylet a nod before leaving. As Sophia walked away, Skylet caught a glimpse of her smirk, a warning of battles. That night, Skylet attended a Juneteenth planning meeting at a community center in Brooklyn, a space where she felt grounded. The organizers, mostly black women like her, discussed celebrating freedom through music and storytelling. Skylet shared her mother's love for jazz, and the group encouraged her to perform a spoken-word piece. It reminded her of her roots, her strength a shield against Sophia's barbs and Ronald's unsettling pull. But Ronald wasn't easily ignored. The next day, he called her into his office to discuss her analysis, which had impressed the board. He said, leaning back in his chair, "You've got a knack for this. Why didn't you aim higher than junior analyst?" Skylet hesitated, then spoke her truth. "Not everyone gets a straight path, Mr. Nelson. Some of us have to fight for every step." His eyes softened, and he leaned forward. "Call me Ronald. And I know about fighting. My family expected me to inherit their wealth and coast. I built this company to prove them wrong." The confession caught her off guard, a glimpse into the man behind the CEO. They talked longer than necessary, the city lights twinkling outside, the air thick with unspoken possibilities. When Skylet left, her heart was racing, not from fear, but from the dangerous thrill of connection. As she rode the subway home, the neon glow of Manhattan fading behind her, Skylet realized something. Ronald Nelson wasn't just a savior or a boss. He was a man who saw her, not as a stereotype, but as a force. And that scared her more than anything. The crisp autumn wind whispered through the tree-lined streets of Brooklyn's Prospect Park, carrying the faint scent of roasted chestnuts from a nearby vendor. Skylet Roberts lingered on a bench, her fingers tracing the edges of Ronald Nelson's business card, now worn from repeated handling. It had been mere days since her entry into Nelson Corporation, and the whirlwind of corporate life had left her breathless. Yet the memory of Ronald's gaze in his office lingered like a secret melody. She pushed it aside, focusing instead on the call she needed to make to Mercy Hospital in Chicago, confirming the funds had secured her mother's next round of chemotherapy. Grace's voice over the phone was weak, but hopeful, a balm to Skylet's soul. "You're my warrior baby girl," her mother said, evoking images of their shared evenings, listening to Nina Simone records, voices blending in harmony against the world's discord. But harmony was fleeting. As Skylet walked home through the fading twilight, her thoughts drifted to Jade, her sister, whose shadows loomed larger with each passing day. Jade's addiction had turned her into a ghost of the vibrant woman who once protected Skylet from neighborhood bullies, teaching her to braid her hair with beads that clicked like affirmations of black pride. Now Jade was a storm unpredictable and destructive. Skylet quickened her pace, the brownstone's familiar stoop coming into view, but a figure detached from the alleyway. Jade, her eyes hollow, her posture desperate. "Sky, I need to talk," Jade said, her voice rasping and edged with urgency. She stepped closer, the streetlight casting elongated shadows that danced like warnings. Skylet halted, her instincts sharpening. "Not now, Jade. I've got nothing left to give." Jade's laugh was bitter, echoing off the brick walls. "Nothing I know about that fancy job, and that white knight who handed you cash like it was candy. Share the wealth, sis." The words struck like a slap, igniting Skylet's anger. How did Jade know about Ronald, the club, and the money were supposed to be buried, which was a one-time lapse? "Stay out of my life," Skylet retorted, sidestepping her sister. But Jade grabbed her arm, her grip vice-like, pulling her into the alley. "You think you're better than me now? With your corporate badge and savior CEO?" Jade's breath reeked of stale smoke and regret. She quickly rifled through Skylet's bag, snatching the cash envelope tips from her old barista shifts, meant for groceries, and a small gift for Grace. "Give it back." Skylet lunged, her nails scraping Jade's wrist, but her sister was fueled by desperation, shoving her against the cold wall. The envelope tore bills fluttering like fallen leaves. Skylet's cry pierced the night, a raw plea that hung in the air. Headlights sliced through the darkness, a familiar black sedan screeching to a halt. Ronald Nelson emerged, his coat flapping like wings of intervention. He moved gracefully, his voice a command that brooked no argument. "Let her go." Jade froze, her eyes widening at the sight of him, tall, imposing, a figure from another world. "You again. What, you're following her now?" Ronald's expression was steel, but his tone remained even, a testament to his boardroom poise. "This ends here. Return what's hers, or I'll involve the authorities." Sensing the shift, the threat hung heavy, and Jade dropped the remaining bills. She spat on the ground, a final act of defiance before slinking into the shadows. Ronald knelt, helping Skylet gather the scattered money, his fingers brushing hers, in a touch that sent unintended sparks through her veins. "Why are you here?" Skylet demanded, standing abruptly, her voice laced with suspicion. "This isn't a coincidence." Ronald rose, meeting her gaze without flinching. "I was driving by after a meeting. Brooklyn's not far from Manhattan. But if you must know, I checked in with the hospital and ensured the payment cleared. Your mother's case. It reminded me of my own losses." Skylet's heart twisted. His vulnerability was a crack in his armor, revealing a man haunted by ghosts. Yet doubt gnawed at her. Men like him, white privileged, often wielded kindness as a tool. She said, "I don't need a guardian angel pocketing the cash, especially one who shows up uninvited." He nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Fair enough. But if you ever do my numbers on that card." She watched him drive away, the taillights fading like a promise unkept. That night in her dimly lit apartment, Skylet replayed the scene, her mind a whirlwind. Ronald's interventions felt too timely, too perfect. Was he tracking her? Or was fate weaving their paths together? She dialed Marcus, her voice steady as she recounted the encounter. "He's everywhere, Mark. What if it's not help but control?" Marcus chuckled softly over the line. "In this city, coincidences happen. But keep your eyes open. Power like his can blind you." The next day at Nelson Corporation, Skylet buried herself in work, analyzing market trends with a fervor that turned heads. Sophia hovered, assigning menial tasks with veiled barbs, but Skylet excelled, her reports crisp and insightful. During lunch in the park adjacent to the Flatiron Building, she confided in Marcus about Jade's escalating demands. "She's spiraling. I can't keep bailing her out." Marcus nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Family's tough, especially when addiction's involved. Have you considered a support group? There's one in Harlem where folks are dealing with similar stuff." The idea resonated, and that evening, Skylet attended the room filled with stories of resilience amid adversity. A woman shared her journey through recovery, echoing Jade's pain, and Skylet felt a spark of hope. But as she left, her phone buzzed a text from an unknown number. "If you need resources for your sister, I know a clinic in Chicago. RN Ronald." Her pulse quickened. How did he know about Jade's suspicion bloomed anew, but so did a reluctant gratitude. She replied, "Thanks, but I've got it." Their paths crossed again in the office elevator, the confined space amplifying the tension. Ronald entered on the 10th floor, his presence commanding yet understated. "Ms. Roberts." He greeted, his eyes lingering a moment too long. "Skylet," she corrected, but there was a challenge in her tone. "And thank you for the clinic suggestion. But how did you know?" He leaned against the wall, his posture relaxed. "I overheard a conversation. Walls are thin in boardrooms." It was a lie she sensed, but his sincerity disarmed her. They talked briefly about work, and his praise for her latest analysis was genuine. "You're a natural," he said, his voice low, intimate in the enclosed space. The doors opened, and she stepped out, but not before feeling the pull, a magnetic force drawing her toward him. That night, Skylet researched Ronald online articles painting him as a visionary CEO who championed diversity initiatives, yet whispers of his cutthroat deals lingered. Was he an ally or an adversary? The alliance deepened when Jade reappeared, this time at Skylet's doorstep pleading for money. Just this once, Sky. For rehab. Skylet hesitated, her heart torn. She wired a small amount, but Jade's promises rang hollow. The next day, Ronald pulled her aside in the office lounge. "I saw the transfer from the company records. If it's for family, there are better ways." His concern felt invasive, yet comforting. "Why do you care?" she asked, her voice soft. "Because I've lost too much to indifference," he replied, his hand brushing her arm, a touch that lingered electric. In that moment, doubt softened into something warmer, an unexpected alliance forming amid the city's relentless rhythm. Skylet realized Ronald wasn't just a savior. He was a mirror, reflecting her strength at her. And as the days blurred, their conversations deepened, weaving a tapestry of trust that neither could deny. The hum of Manhattan's morning rush filtered through the glass walls of Nelson Corporation, where ambition pulsed like the city's heartbeat. Skylet Roberts arrived early, her steps purposeful on the polished floors, a portfolio of fresh ideas tucked under her arm. Weeks into her role, she had transformed from newcomer to indispensable force, her analyses sparking discussions in meetings that once overlooked voices like hers. The corporate maze was a battlefield, but Skylet navigated it gracefully, drawing on the resilience from generations of Black women who turned barriers into bridges. Her desk, nestled in the open-plan office, was a sanctuary of organized chaos, spreadsheets pinned with notes on market disruptions, a photo of her mother smiling from a Chicago hospital bed, serving as motivation. Marcus Johnson, her steadfast ally, swung by with coffee in hand. "You ready for the big pitch today?" he asked, his grin infectious. Skylet nodded, her coiled hair swept into an elegant updo, accentuating her determined features. "As ready as I'll ever be." This could change things. The pitch was for a new diversity-focused campaign, inspired by Skylet's insights into underserved markets in communities like Harlem and Bed-Stuy. She had spent nights researching blending data with personal anecdotes from her life stories of Black entrepreneurs thriving despite odds. Ever the skeptic, Sophia Bennett dismissed it as niche, but Skylet saw opportunity. In the conference room, sunlight streamed through blinds, casting patterns like strategic lines on a chessboard. Ronald Nelson presided at the head, his presence a quiet anchor amid the executives' chatter. His eyes met Skylet's briefly, a silent encouragement that sent a subtle thrill through her. Their interactions had evolved professional on the surface, but laced with an undercurrent of shared understanding, born from late-night emails debating strategy. As Skylet presented her voice steady and eloquent, the room fell silent. She wove statistics with narratives painting a vision of inclusivity that resonated. This isn't just business, she concluded, it's building legacies. Applause followed, but Sophia's expression was tepid, a mask of envy. Ronald's nod was approving his comment afterward in the hallway, lingering like a caress. Impressive work, Skylet. You're reshaping how we think. The praise warmed her, but hidden tensions simmered. Sophia cornered her later in the break room, her tone laced with false sweetness, quite the show. But remember, flash doesn't last. Substance does. Skylet smiled politely, refusing to engage. I'll keep that in mind. Ambition fueled her days, but evenings brought introspection. She visited a jazz club in Harlem, the saxophone's wail echoing her inner turmoil. There, amid the crowd's sway, she reflected on Ronald's growing influence. His suggestions in meetings aligned with hers. But was it support or subtle control? A text from him arrived. Dinner to discuss the campaign. Purely professional. She accepted curiosity, overriding caution. The restaurant in Chelsea was intimate candlelight flickering on linen tables. Ronald arrived in a casual sweater that softened his CEO edges, his conversation flowing from business to personal. Tell me about Harlem, he said, genuine interest in his eyes. I've read about its history, but I want your perspective. Skylet shared tales of Renaissance poets and modern activists, her words painting vivid pictures. He listened, absorbing his questions, thoughtful. You've opened my eyes, he admitted. Privilege blinds us sometimes. The evening deepened, their bond whispers of ambition, intertwining with budding affection. However, tension arose when Sophia leaked a rumor Skylet was fast-tracking due to favoritism. Whispers in the office corridors stung, evoking old wounds of being undermined as a black woman. Marcus pulled her aside. Ignore them. Your work speaks for itself. Yet the hidden barbs escalated. Sophia assigned her a flawed dataset, setting her up for failure in a report. Skylet caught it, correcting it overnight, her determination a shield. Ronald noticed, pulling her into his office. Sophia's games won't stand. Focus on your path. His protectiveness stirred conflict within her, gratitude, mixed with wariness. I can handle it, she said, her gaze meeting his. In that moment, the air thickened, a silent acknowledgement of the spark between them. As weeks passed, Skylet's ambition soared. She led a team on a pilot project, and her leadership was inspiring. Evenings with Ronald became more frequent, disguised as mentorship, but laced with romance, shared glances, lingering touches. Walking through Central Park's autumn foliage one night, he confessed, "You're not just an employee. Skylet, you're extraordinary." Her heart raced, but she held back. And you? What are you to me? He paused, leaves crunching underfoot. Whatever you'll allow. The tension built, whispers of doubt giving way to desire. But Sophia's envy festered, planting seeds of discord that threatened to bloom. Skylet, ever resilient, prepared for the storm, her ambition a flame that no shadow could extinguish. The golden hues of a late October sunset bathed Manhattan's Flatiron district, casting long shadows across the glass facade of Nelson Corporation. Inside, Skylet Roberts moved with quiet confidence through the bustling office, her presence a blend of poise and purpose. Weeks of proving herself as a junior analyst had sharpened her instincts. Her reports were now anticipated by executives who once overlooked her. Yet beneath her polished exterior, a tailored blazer, and a smile that deflected doubt, lay a heart wrestling with the growing pull of Ronald Nelson. Their late-night discussions, ostensibly about strategy, had woven a thread of intimacy. Each shared glance, a brushstroke on a canvas, neither dared to name. Skylet's desk was a testament to her diligence. Neatly stacked files, a notebook filled with insights on Nelson Corporation's diversity campaign, and a small plant, a gift from Marcus, symbolizing her roots taking hold. Her latest project, a proposal to partner with Black-owned businesses in Harlem, had earned praise, but also the sharpened gaze of Sophia Bennett, whose envy simmered like a storm on the horizon. With her polished blonde hair and calculated smiles, Sophia saw Skylet's rise as a threat, her microaggressions growing bolder with each of Skylet's successes. The tension erupted on a crisp Wednesday morning when Skylet arrived to find her desk drawer slightly ajar. Inside, nestled among her pens, was a delicate silver bracelet, its presence as jarring as a siren. Her pulse quickened. She owned no such jewelry, and its sudden appearance reeked of sabotage. Sophia swept in before she could process it, her voice loud enough to draw eyes. "Skylet, have you seen my bracelet? I left it in the break room yesterday, and now it's gone." Heads turned, whispers rippling through the open-plan office. Skylet's throat tightened, the weight of accusation pressing against her. She said, "I haven't seen it." Her voice steady despite the heat rising in her cheeks. Sophia's eyes gleamed with feigned distress, her performance impeccable. "Then you won't mind if we check your desk," Sophia said, her tone syrupy with malice. She reached for the drawer, pulling out the bracelet with a theatrical gasp. "Well, look at this. Care to explain?" The office fell silent, the air thick with judgment. Skylet's mind raced. Sophia had planted it a trap, as old as prejudice itself, painting her as the untrustworthy black woman. Memories of high school of being unfairly disciplined for infractions she didn't commit surged forward. But Skylet was no longer that girl. She was a woman forged in resilience. She said, "I didn't take it." Her gaze locked onto Sophia's. "And I'd suggest checking the security footage before you accuse me." Sophia faltered, but her smirk held. "Why bother? It's right here. What's your excuse?" Before Skylet could respond, Marcus stepped forward, his presence a quiet anchor. "Let's do what Skylet said. Check the cameras. If she's innocent, you'll look foolish, Sophia." The standoff drew a crowd, and Skylet felt the weight of their stares. Some curious others, eager for drama. Her heart pounded not from fear, but from the fire of defiance. She had fought too hard to let this unravel her. The matter escalated to Ronald's office, a sleek sanctuary of glass and steel overlooking Madison Square Park. He stood behind his desk, his navy suit impeccable, his expression unreadable. Sophia recounted her loss with crocodile tears, while Skylet stood tall, her chin lifted. Ronald's eyes flicked to her, a silent question passing between them. "Ms. Bennett, you're certain this is your bracelet?" Ronald asked, his voice calm, but edged with authority. "Absolutely," Sophia replied, clutching the jewelry like a trophy. Ronald nodded, then turned to his assistant. "Pull the footage from the break room and Skylet's desk area. Now." The wait was agonizing, the room heavy with unspoken tensions. Skylet's mind wandered to her mother Grace, whose strength had taught her to stand firm. She thought of Ronald too, his unexpected kindness, his gaze that saw her as more than a statistic. When Victor returned, the footage was clear. Sophia slipping the bracelet into Skylet's drawer during a late-night shift, her movements deliberate. Sophia's face paled, her excuses stumbling. "It was a mistake. I must have misplaced it." Ronald's jaw tightened, his voice cutting like a blade. "A mistake that could have cost Ms. Roberts her reputation." "You're on probation, Sophia. Another misstep and you're out." The room exhaled, and Skylet felt a rush of vindication. Ronald turned to her, his expression softening. "Ms. Roberts, I apologize for this. Your work speaks for itself, and I'd like you to take on a larger role in the diversity campaign as my personal analyst." The promotion was a lifeline, but also a spotlight. Skylet nodded, her gratitude tinged with wariness. "Thank you, Mr. Nelson. I won't let you down." As the office dispersed, Marcus squeezed her shoulder. "You handled that like a queen. But watch Sophia. She's not done." That evening, Skylet joined a community meeting in Harlem, a space alive with the rhythm of activism. The group planned a Juneteenth festival, and Skylet volunteered to organize a panel on Black entrepreneurship, her passion fueled by corporate battles. The room buzzed with laughter and shared stories, a reminder of her roots. Yet as she spoke, her phone buzzed a message from Ronald: "Dinner to celebrate your victory." "My treat." She hesitated, the memory of Sophia's trap a warning. But curiosity won. The restaurant tucked in Greenwich Village was intimate, its walls adorned with jazz posters that echoed Harlem's soul. Ronald arrived, his casual sweater contrasting with his CEO persona, his smile disarming. "You were fearless today," he said, raising a glass of wine. "Not many could have stood their ground like that." Skylet sipped her drink, the warmth spreading. "I've had practice. Growing up Black in Brooklyn, you learn to fight for your truth." He leaned closer, his eyes searching hers. "Tell me about it. I want to understand." She shared fragments of her life's schoolyard, taunts, her mother's gospel hymns, the pride of Juneteenth celebrations. Ronald listened, his questions thoughtful, and his privilege acknowledged with humility that surprised her. "I've never had to fight like that," he admitted, "but I admire it more than you know." The night deepened their conversation, a dance of ideas and emotions. As they walked through Washington Square Park, the arch glowing under moonlight, Ronald's hand brushed hers, a touch that lingered like a promise. Skylet pulled back, her heart a battlefield. "We can't blur lines, Ronald. You're my boss." He nodded, his expression earnest. "I know. But I see you, Skylet, not just as an employee, but as someone extraordinary." The words hung between them, a spark igniting in the autumn chill. Skylet returned home, her mind a whirl of ambition and longing. Sophia's envy was a shadow, but Ronald's faith in her was a shield she wasn't sure she could wield without losing herself. Winter's first breath swept through Brooklyn, frosting the windows of Skylet Roberts' modest apartment in Crown Heights. The eviction notice taped to her door was as cold as the air, a stark reminder that her barista wages and new analyst salary couldn't stretch to cover back rent and her mother's ongoing care at Mercy Hospital. Skylet stood frozen, the paper trembling in her hands, its words a cruel echo of the struggles she'd fought to escape. Her mother, Grace, had taught her to face hardship with dignity, but dignity couldn't pay the landlord. As she packed a small bag, her heart heavy with defeat, a knock startled her. Ronald Nelson stood in the hallway, his overcoat dusted with snow, his presence incongruous against the peeling paint. "Marcus told me," he said, his blue eyes scanning her weary expression. "You can't stay here, Skylet. Come with me." She bristled, pride flaring. "I don't need charity, Ronald. I'll figure it out." "It's not charity," he countered, his voice gentle but firm. "It's a practical solution. I have a guest suite in my penthouse on the Upper East Side. Stay there and help with some household tasks, no strings attached." Skylet hesitated, the weight of her situation battling her independence. She thought of Grace, whose latest hospital report was promising but fragile. Swallowing her pride, she nodded, "Just until I'm back on my feet." The penthouse was a world apart, its sleek lines and panoramic views of Central Park contrasted with Brooklyn's grit. Skylet felt like an interloper, her worn sneakers out of place on the marble floors. Ronald showed her a suite with plush bedding and a window overlooking the city's twinkling lights. "Make it your own," he said, his smile disarming. "And if you're up for it, cook dinner sometime. I'm hopeless in the kitchen." The arrangement settled into a rhythm. Skylet cooked soul food recipes, collard greens, cornbread, her mother's specialties infusing the sterile penthouse with warmth. Ronald joined her, his attempts at chopping onions endearingly clumsy. their laughter filling the space. Evenings stretched into conversations about dreams and fears. Skylet sharing stories of Harlem's jazz clubs. Ronald confessing the pressures of his Upper East Side upbringing. My father wanted me to be a figurehead, and he admitted one night that I would be stirring a pot of gumbo. I built Nelson Corporation to prove I could be more. Skylet nodded, her heart softening. And I'm proving I'm more than where I came from. But it's harder when the world sees your skin before your soul. Their talks deepened, a dance of trust unfolding. One evening, Ronald surprised her with tickets to a jazz performance at Smoke Jazz Club in Harlem. The music, saxophones, wailing drums pulsing, wove them closer, their shoulders brushing in the dim light. Skylet felt the pull of his presence, a tide she couldn't resist. "Thank you," she whispered, as they left the night air crisp. This felt like home, but home was fragile. At work, rumors swirled about Skylet's special treatment, fueled by Sophia, and a new player, Eliza Green, the daughter of a key investor in Nelson Corporation. With her polished elegance and icy ambition, Eliza saw Skylet as a rival, not just for Ronald's attention, but for the power she wielded in the company. During a board meeting, Eliza questioned Skylet's diversity campaign, her tone dripping with condescension. "It's admirable, but is it profitable?" Skylet countered with data, her voice unwavering. "It's profitable because it's authentic. Communities like Harlem drive trends. Ignore them, and you miss the future." Ronald backed her, his approval a quiet victory. But Eliza's smile was predatory. Later, she cornered Skylet in the hallway. "You're playing a dangerous game cozying up to Ronald. He's out of your league." Skylet's eyes narrowed. "I'm not playing games. I'm building a career." The tension escalated when Eliza spread rumors of a fabricated engagement to Ronald, her whispers reaching Skylet through office gossip. Hurt and doubt gnawed at her, the image of Ronald with someone like Eliza, a woman who shared his world of wealth, stinging more than she expected. She confronted him in his office, the city's lights a backdrop to her turmoil. "Is it true? Are you engaged?" Ronald's expression darkened, his voice low. "Eliza's father is a partner, nothing more. She's inventing stories to control the narrative. I'm not that man, Skylet." His sincerity disarmed her, but the seed of doubt lingered. That night in the penthouse, they cooked in silence, the air heavy. Ronald broke it, setting down a knife. "I don't want you to doubt me. Or us." "Us." Skylet echoed, her heart racing. "There's no us when you're my boss, Ronald. And when women like Eliza think I'm a threat because of my skin." He stepped closer, his gaze intense. "You're not a threat. You're a force, and I'm not afraid of what that means." The moment hung, charged with possibility. Skylet turned away, her emotions a tangle. As winter deepened, their cohabitation became a haven where jazz records played, and laughter softened their world's edges. But Eliza's whispers grew louder, and Skylet knew trust was a fragile dance that could unravel with a single misstep. The first snow of December dusted Manhattan's streets, transforming the city into a canvas of white and silver. Skylet Roberts stood on the balcony of Ronald Nelson's Upper East Side penthouse, her breath forming delicate clouds in the frigid air. The skyline glittered below a constellation of ambition and dreams, but her heart was a storm of conflicting emotions. Living with Ronald had become a delicate dance, their evenings filled with shared meals and soulful conversations. Yet the weight of their unspoken connection pressed against her like the winter chill. She was no longer just an analyst at Nelson Corporation, but a woman navigating a labyrinth of trust, desire, and the ever-present shadow of Eliza Green's machinations. Inside, the aroma of Skylet's latest culinary creation, a slow-cooked jambalaya, inspired by her mother's Chicago kitchen, wafted through the penthouse. Ronald's sleeves rolled up stirred the pot with a boyish grin, his usual CEO polish softened by the domestic moment. "You're spoiling me," he teased, his blue eyes catching the candlelight. I might never eat out again. Skylet laughed, the sound easing the tension in her chest. Please don't get used to it. I'm only here until I find my own place. His smile faltered, a flicker of something disappointment crossing his face. No rush, he said softly, setting down the spoon. This place feels alive with you here. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Skylet turned away, focusing on the city lights, her heart racing. Ronald was no longer just her boss or savior. He was a man whose presence stirred a longing she couldn't name. But Eliza's rumors of an engagement, though debunked, lingered like a poison, sowing doubts about where she stood in his world, a world of wealth and privilege she could never fully inhabit. At Nelson Corporation, Skylet's star continued to rise. Her diversity campaign had gained traction, with partnerships forming with Black-owned businesses across Harlem and Brooklyn. She worked late, her desk a fortress of data and vision, her passion fueled by the memory of her mother Grace, whose health was stabilizing at Mercy Hospital. Marcus, her steadfast ally, cheered her on, but warned of Eliza's growing influence. She's got her father's ear, he said over lunch at a Flatiron food truck, his voice low. And she's unhappy about your role or your closeness to Ronald. Eliza's next move came at a company gala in the Hamptons, a lavish affair at a seaside estate where Manhattan's elite mingled under chandeliers. Skylet arrived in a borrowed emerald gown, its fabric hugging her curves, a quiet defiance against the whispers that followed her. Ronald had invited her as his key analyst, a professional gesture, but his eyes betrayed something more profound when he saw her. You look like you belong here, he murmured, offering his arm. The gala was a whirlwind of champagne and power plays, but Eliza stole the spotlight. Dressed in ivory silk, she glided through the crowd, her smile a weapon. She cornered Skylet near the bar, her voice dripping with venom. You're quite the guest, Miss Roberts. But don't mistake Ronald's kindness for something more. He's practically engaged to me. Skylet's heart clenched, but she held her ground. If that's true, why do I so threaten you? Eliza's laugh was sharp, a blade disguised as mirth. Threatened. You're a novelty, nothing more. The lie unraveled when Ronald overheard his presence silencing the crowd. Eliza, enough, he said, his voice low but commanding. Skylet's here because she earned it, unlike some who rely on their father's name. The rebuke stung, and Eliza's eyes flashed with fury. She retreated, but not before planting a seed of chaos. Later, as Skylet mingled, Eliza orchestrated a cruel prank. She announced a poolside toast, luring guests to the estate's heated pool. Skylet, unaware, followed only to be pushed by an accidental jostle from Eliza's friend. She fell into the water. Her gown ruined the crowd's laughter, a dagger to her pride. Ronald was there, instantly diving in to help her, his suit soaked as he pulled her to the edge. Are you okay? He whispered, his hands steadying her, his eyes blazing with protective fury. Skylet nodded, shivering her dignity, battered but intact. I'm fine. But she planned this. Ronald's jaw tightened. He turned to the crowd, his voice cutting through the murmurs. This ends now. Anyone who disrespects my team answers to me. He escorted Skylet inside, wrapping her in his jacket, the scent of his cologne grounding her. In a quiet study away from prying eyes, he knelt before her, drying her hair with a towel. I'm sorry, he said, his voice raw. I should have seen this coming. Skylet met his gaze, her heart a battlefield. Why do you keep saving me, Ronald? What am I to you? He paused, his hand stilling. You're someone I can't stop thinking about, someone who makes me want to be better. The confession hung in the air, a spark igniting in the silence. Skylet wanted to lean into it, to let the warmth of his words envelop her, but doubt held her back. And Eliza? Her lies, they're not just about you. They're about who I am, where I come from. Ronald stood, his expression resolute. Eliza's nothing to me. You are. They returned to the gala, Skylet in a borrowed dress, her head high. But Eliza's web of envy tightened. She spread whispers on social media, framing Skylet as an opportunist, a diversity hire climbing through Ronald's favor. The posts went viral within the company, fueling gossip that stung Skylet's pride. She confronted Ronald in his office the next day, her voice steady despite the hurt. This isn't just about Eliza. It's about what people think of me, a black woman in your world. I need to stand on my own. Ronald nodded, his eyes searching hers. Then let me stand beside you, not in front of you. The promise was a lifeline, but the gala's fallout lingered. Skylet threw herself into her work, leading a presentation that secured a significant partnership with a Harlem tech startup. Her success was a shield, but Eliza's venom was far from spent. As Skylet walked home through Central Park, the snow falling softly, she felt the weight of her choices. Ronald was a haven, but his world was a storm, and she wasn't sure if her heart could weather it. January's icy grip tightened around New York, the city's pulse slowing under a blanket of snow. Skylet Roberts stood at the edge of Central Park, her breath visible in the frosty air, her heart a tangle of resolve and longing. The past weeks had been a whirlwind. Her rise at Nelson Corporation, her deepening bond with Ronald Nelson, and the relentless shadow of Eliza Green's schemes. Living in Ronald's penthouse had become a sanctuary, their shared moments a tapestry of laughter and vulnerability, but Skylet felt the ground shifting beneath her. The gala's humiliation, orchestrated by Eliza, had exposed the chasm between their worlds, his of privilege, hers of struggle, and she yearned to bridge it on her own terms. At work, Skylet's leadership shone. Her diversity campaign had secured funding, and she was tasked with leading a delegation to Chicago to pitch it to Midwest investors. The opportunity was a milestone, a chance to prove her worth beyond Ronald's protection. She threw herself into preparations, her nights refining slides and rehearsing in the penthouse's quiet study. Ronald watched, his admiration evident, but his presence stirred a question. Could she love a man whose world threatened to overshadow hers? One evening, the tension broke in the penthouse kitchen, where Skylet prepared a batch of her mother's sweet potato pie. Ronald joined her. His tie loosened his usual polish, softened by the domestic scene. He observed that you're nervous about Chicago, slicing yams with surprising skill. Skylet nodded, her hands steady as she mixed spices. It's my shot to stand on my own. I can't let anyone, not even you, carry me there. His smile was tender, but his eyes held a flicker of hurt. I'd never hold you back, Skylet. I want you to soar. The words were a balm, but doubt lingered. Eliza's rumors had left scars, and Skylet feared her success would always be questioned as Ronald's favor. She voiced it, her voice soft but firm. People think I'm here because of you. I need to prove them wrong. Ronald set down his knife, stepping closer. Then let's prove it together as equals. The promise lingered, but their dance was interrupted by a call from Marcus. Sky, trouble's brewing. Eliza's pushing her father to pull funding unless you're sidelined. The news hit like a blow. Skylet's resolve hardened. She would go to Chicago and win no matter the cost. But fate had other plans. The night before her trip, she received a call from her landlord, who'd reversed the eviction after Ronald's discreet intervention. The gesture, meant to help, felt like another tether. Skylet confronted him, her voice trembling with frustration. I need to do this myself, Ronald. Every time you step in, it feels like I'm less. He stood silent, his expression a mix of regret and resolve. I'm trying to support you, Skylet, but I hear you. I'll back off. The distance between them grew, a fracture in their fragile bond. Skylet left for Chicago, her heart heavy, but her focus sharp. The city welcomed her with its towering skyline and biting wind, a reminder of her mother's hospital bed at Mercy. The pitch was a triumph. Investors were captivated by her vision, signing a multi-million-dollar deal. Skylet called Grace, her voice breaking with pride. "Mama, I did it for us." But victory was short-lived. Back in New York, Eliza escalated her campaign. She orchestrated a meeting with Ronald's board, questioning Skylet's objectivity due to their personal ties. The accusation spread like wildfire, amplified by social media posts, painting Skylet as an opportunist. Hurt and betrayed Skylet confronted Ronald in his office, the city's lights a stark backdrop. "Is this what you wanted?" she demanded, her eyes blazing. "A relationship that costs me my credibility." Ronald's face was a mask of anguish. "I never meant for this. I'll shut it down publicly if I have to." She shook her head, tears threatening. "I need space, Ronald, to find myself again." The fracture widened as Skylet moved out, renting a small apartment in Brooklyn with her new earnings. The distance was a call to courage, a chance to redefine her path. She threw herself into the Juneteenth festival, planning her spoken word performance at a Harlem community center, declaring her strength. The crowd's applause was a lifeline, but her heart ached for Ronald's presence. Then came the crisis. Late one night, as Skylet walked home through Bed-Stuy, a car screeched to a halt. Jade, her sister, emerged with a stranger, a man with cold eyes and a menacing grin. "You owe me, Sky." Jade slurred her addiction, driving her desperation. The man grabbed Skylet, his grip bruising, but she fought back, her screams echoing. She managed to dial 911, her voice steady as she gave her location. Police arrived swiftly, dispersing the threat, but the incident shook her. Ronald appeared at the precinct, his face pale with worry. "I heard the call on a police scanner app," he explained, his voice raw. "I couldn't stay away." Skylet's defenses wavered, his concern a beacon in her storm. "I'm okay," she said, but her hand lingered in his, a silent acknowledgement of their bond. Back in Brooklyn, Skylet visited the community center, where elders shared stories of resilience. One woman, her hair silvered with age, took Skylet's hand. "Courage isn't just fighting. It's choosing who to let in." As snow fell outside, Skylet realized the fracture with Ronald wasn't permanent. It was a call to redefine their love, rooted in mutual respect. She texted him, "Meet me at the Harlem Jazz Club tomorrow. We need to talk." The stage was set for reconciliation, but Eliza's shadow loomed, her next move, poised to test Skylet's courage like never before. The Harlem Jazz Club was alive with the soulful wail of a trumpet, its notes weaving through the warm, amber-lit room like a lover's whisper. Skylet Roberts sat at a corner table, her fingers tracing the rim of a glass of bourbon, the drink untouched. February's chill lingered outside, but inside the music and the crowd's energy wrapped her in a cocoon of familiarity. This was her sanctuary, a place where Black culture thrived, where stories of resilience echoed in every chord. Tonight, however, her heart was a battlefield torn between the courage she'd reclaimed and the pull of Ronald Nelson, the man who had become both her anchor and her storm. Their separation had been a crucible, forging Skylet's resolve to stand as an equal. Her success in Chicago had silenced doubters at Nelson Corporation, and her diversity campaign is now a flagship initiative. But the cost has been personal. Ronald's absence left an ache, his protective gestures, once overwhelming, now a memory she craved. The incident with Jade had shaken her, but it also clarified her truth. She loved Ronald not as a savior, but as a partner who saw her strength. She'd invited him to this sacred space to rewrite their story tonight. Ronald entered his presence, cutting through the crowd like a beacon. His charcoal coat was dusted with snow, his blue eyes searching until they found her. He moved with purpose, yet there was a vulnerability in his stride, a man stripped of his CEO armor. Skylet, He said, his voice low, almost drowned by the music. "You look radiant." She smiled, her emerald dress catching the light, a nod to her mother's love for vibrant hues. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the chair opposite. "We need to talk." The jazz swelled, a saxophone, weaving a tale of longing. Skylet took a breath, her words deliberate. "I needed space to find myself, Ronald, to prove I could stand without you. But I don't want to stand alone." His eyes softened, a flicker of hope breaking through. "I pushed too hard," he admitted, leaning forward. "I thought protecting you meant fixing everything. I was wrong." The confession disarmed her. Its honesty was a bridge across their divide. They talked, their voices blending with the music, sharing truths they'd held back. Skylet spoke of her fears of being seen, as less of losing her identity in his world. Ronald shared his own growing up under his father's expectations, building Nelson Corporation to escape a gilded cage. He said, "You make me want to be more," his hand inching toward hers. "Not just a CEO, but a man worthy of you." The music paused, and Skylet's heart raced. She reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining a silent vow. "Then, let's build something real," she whispered, "as equals." Their reconciliation was sealed with a walk through Harlem's snow-dusted streets, the city's pulse syncing with their own. They stopped at a mural celebrating Black luminaries, Skylet tracing the painted face of Zora Neale Hurston. "This is my history," she said. "If we're together, you need to understand it." Ronald nodded, his gaze earnest. "Teach me." The next day, Skylet brought Ronald to Mercy Hospital in Chicago, a pilgrimage to her mother's bedside. Grace, frail but radiant, clasped Ronald's hand. "You've got a good heart," she said, her voice a melody of strength. "But my Skylet's the real treasure. Don't ever forget that." Ronald smiled, his respect palpable. "I won't, Mrs. Roberts." The visit was a turning point, grounding their love in family and truth. Back in New York, Skylet threw herself into the Juneteenth festival preparations, Ronald joining her at community meetings, his presence a quiet support. He learned the history of Black resilience, his questions thoughtful, his commitment deepening. Their evenings were spent in Central Park, sharing dreams under starlit skies, their bond a tapestry of trust and tenderness. But Eliza Green's shadow loomed. Her latest scheme unfolded at a glittering Times Square gala, where Nelson Corporation announced its diversity partnerships. Skylet, now a lead strategist, stood beside Ronald, her confidence a beacon. Eliza, resplendent in gold, saw their unity as a challenge. She'd hired a private investigator, unearthing Skylet's brief stint at Neon Vale, twisting it into a scandal. During the gala, she slipped the story to a gossip blogger, and the post went viral. Nelson CEO's analyst linked to shady past. The crowd buzzed, phones lighting up with notifications. Skylet's heart sank, the old shame resurfacing. Ronald, sensing her distress, took her hand. "We face this together," he whispered. He addressed the room, his voice commanding. "Skylet Roberts is the heart of our campaign. Her past, her fight to save her mother, proves her strength. Anyone who questions her answers to me." The crowd fell silent, Eliza's face pale. Ronald's team traced the leak to her, and he confronted her father, a key investor. He said, "Your daughter's actions threaten our partnership," his tone icy. "End this, or our deal is done." Eliza's father, humiliated, withdrew her influence, leaving her isolated. Skylet, bolstered by Ronald's defense, spoke at the gala, her voice steady. "My past doesn't define me. My work does. And I'm here to build a future for all of us." The applause was thunderous, a triumph over Eliza's venom. Ronald led Skylet to a secluded grove in Central Park that night, fairy lights twinkling above. He knelt, a velvet box in hand, a diamond ring catching the moonlight. "Skylet, you're my partner, my equal. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred her vision, not of doubt, but of certainty. "Yes," she whispered, her heart soaring. As they embraced, the city seemed to hum their song, a promise of love forged in truth. Spring arrived in Brooklyn like a quiet revolution. Cherry blossoms painting the streets with bursts of pink and white. Skylet Roberts stood in her new apartment, a cozy brownstone loft in Bed-Stuy. Its walls adorned with photos of her mother Grace and mementos from Harlem's jazz clubs. The ring on her finger, a simple diamond set in rose gold, gleamed under the morning light, symbolizing her commitment to Ronald Nelson. Their engagement, born in the glow of Central Park, had shifted their world, but the path to their future was not without its fires. Nelson Corporation buzzed with new energy. Skylet is now a senior strategist, and her diversity campaign reshapes the company's ethos. She led with a fire honed by years of overcoming barriers, her presence a testament to Black excellence. Ronald, ever her partner, championed her vision, and their professional synergy mirrored their personal bond. Yet the world outside their love was not so kind. Social media still hummed with whispers of their unlikely union, a Black woman from Brooklyn and a white CEO from the Upper East Side, fueling debates about race power and privilege. Skylet faced these with defiance, her voice amplified at community events. At a Brooklyn Juneteenth festival, she performed a spoken word piece, her words weaving tales of her ancestors' resilience and her own journey. Ronald stood in the crowd, his eyes shining with pride, learning the rhythm of her world. Their evenings were spent in her loft cooking soul food and planning a wedding that would blend their cultures, gospel hymns and jazz, alongside classical strings, a celebration of unity. But Eliza Green's final act of vengeance loomed. Disgraced after the Times Square gala, she'd retreated, but her bitterness festered. She allied with Jade, Skylet's sister, whose addiction had spiraled into rage. Together, they planned a final strike, targeting Skylet at a community fundraiser in Harlem. The event, held in a historic ballroom, was a beacon of hope, raising funds for Black youth programs. Skylet, radiant in a crimson gown, spoke passionately, her words igniting the crowd. As she stepped outside for air, Jade emerged from the shadows, her eyes wild. "You think you're untouchable now?" she hissed, a knife glinting in her hand. Eliza watched from a distance, her smirk cold. Skylet froze, her heart pounding, but years of surviving Brooklyn's streets sharpened her instincts. She dodged as Jade lunged, her scream alerting security. Ronald inside heard the commotion and raced out, his presence a shield. "Enough," he roared, stepping between them. Security apprehended Jade and police arrived. Eliza's involvement was exposed through text messages on Jade's phone. The crowd watched, stunned, as Eliza was escorted away, her empire of envy crumbling. Skylet trembled, Ronald's arms steadying her. "You're safe," he whispered, his voice a vow. They returned to the loft, the night heavy with what could have been. "I can't lose you," Skylet said, her voice breaking, not to her, not to anyone. Ronald held her, his touch grounding. "You won't. We're stronger than their hate." The incident galvanized them. Skylet visited Jade in rehab, offering forgiveness, but boundaries, her heart heavy but resolute. Grace, now recovering, joined them for a family dinner, her laughter a melody of healing. "You two are a force," she said, clasping their hands. "Build something beautiful." Their wedding was a Brooklyn affair, in a garden under summer skies, blending Black gospel choirs with Ronald's family's traditions. Skylet walked down the aisle in a gown inspired by African textiles, Ronald's smile brighter than the sun. Their vows were a promise of equality, their kiss a defiance of the world's doubts. Months later, Skylet discovered she was pregnant. The news, a spark of joy. At a checkup in Chicago, the doctor confirmed a healthy 7-week pregnancy, and Ronald's eyes lit with wonder. He said, "We're building a family," his hand on her stomach, "one that carries your strength and our love." They planned for their child, discussing names that honored their heritage. Malik for a boy, Zora for a girl. Skylet led Nelson Corporation's community outreach. Ronald by her side, and their love was a testament to unity. At a Harlem festival, they danced to jazz, their laughter mingling with the crowds, a family forged in fire. As summer faded, Skylet stood on their loft's balcony, Ronald's arms around her, the city humming below. "We did it," she whispered against all odds. He kissed her forehead, his voice soft. "With you, anything's possible." Their story, a tapestry of struggle and triumph, was a beacon for others, a love transcending race, class, and hate, proving that truth and courage could forge a future. Thank you for joining Skylet and Ronald's journey. If their story moved you, please like, share, and comment below. Subscribe to our channel for more tales of love and resilience. Let's celebrate stories that unite us.